Hi, this is Jan, and it's time for another episode of the visit to Europe last summer. It's kind of getting further and further in the past, but the memories are still pretty fresh. And it's nice to look at these sunny, warm pictures because it's the middle of winter time here and it's cool, chilly, nothing unusual, but kind of winter weather here in Eugene. So let us do a screen share here. And this is what we're looking for. And you should see that image right there. So what we're going to look at today is the beginning of Sardegna. I spent about a month in Sardegna. Take a look at this map right here. This is Sardegna. I think it's something like the second largest island in the Mediterranean. You can see the scale right here. So not huge, but you're not going to walk from here to here in a couple of days. And especially, it's a pretty hilly island as well. It's not as mountainous as Corsica is, but you're never anywhere in Sardinia where you don't see some mountains, at least off in the distance. But there are some pretty sizable areas that are fairly flat. By sizable, I mean 15, 20 kilometers, 8 or 10 or 12 miles flat. But there's always hills, if not mountains, within view. And of course, there's this awesome coastline. This was an earlier trip. I did this in 1999. This visit here more on the southeast coast. And of course, this is the larger map of Europe. We've already looked at most of this here, and the last episode was from up here in northern Italy. That was Corsica to Corsica, and then the last episode was Corsica. What fun that was. So this is where we're looking at right now. This is Sardinia. That's a larger picture. So this is leaving Corsica. This is Bonifacio, famous, of course, for these cliffs. Wow, it's pretty beautiful. And there's about a hour and a half ferry between Bonifacio and Galena. Let's see, Santa Galena. Forgot the name of the town you arrive at here in Santa Teresa Gallura. Yeah, okay. And this thing always likes to move by itself. So what we're going to do is start off here and go along the coast to near Porto Torres and then down to the Alghero airport. My good luck, there's a bus that goes from here to the airport in Alghero, and my timing was pretty good. So I caught that bus. I put my bike on the bus, and that was middle afternoon. And by late afternoon, I was here in Alghero and began to look for some place where I would stay. So let's just start with the bus ride here. Here's the bus, and I'm just waiting. The bus left at a certain time. I had a little time to wait there in the town there in the north end of Sardinia. So I had some lunch, and there were some people mowing the park. So it was a nice wait, and I was really excited to, this was going to Alghero, one of my primary destinations for my entire trip. So this is just a little bit of what that northwest coast of Sardinia looks like. It's hilly, and there are people who live along the coast here. There's some towns. This is a town I passed by. Wow, out here on this promontory here. So, and you saw some evidence of tourism as well. A lot of people go to Sardegna. This is no secret location at all. So I arrived to the airport, and that's where the bus ride ended, but that was fine with me. It's not so far to Alghero. These are kilometers right here. So I biked the rest of the way into Alghero. This is a little bit of what the beach area of Alghero looks like. This is actually the old town of Alghero you see off here in the distance. This is kind of one of their iconic bits of architecture, a church steeple. I don't know the age, but probably dates back 400 years or something like that. But this large area of Alghero is tourism. A lot of people go to Alghero, and as I found out, it's not a secret why. It's a really, really nice place. I really like Alghero. So there's the beach, and this is for walking, kind of a lungomare, not particularly too exciting right here. It gets better closer to town, but then there was this really nice bikeway as well. So I did find a place to stay. I knew there were some campgrounds, and this is the one I ended up staying at. This was my second night right here. I had a really lousy place the first night, and I said, if you don't have anything better than this, I'll find another place to stay, because it was really a lousy spot. So they opened up this area, let me camp here, and there was nobody even anywhere near. The campground had a capacity 2 to 3 times more than the number of people who were there. There were still a lot of people there. It's a big campground, but this area wasn't even really open, but they let me camp out here. So, wow, what a view that is. It's really nice. This is actually a freshwater lagoon right here. So this is where I stayed for several nights there in Alghero. And one of my first places to go to was a hardware store. So I had to go in here. I had to find a little chain and a lock. I lost my bike lock and chain. So I went in here, and it was just kind of fun to take a look at an Italian hardware store right there. But of course, I was very interested in checking out Alghero. This is in town right here, and ever on the alert for looking to identify efforts to push back on cars. This is one of the first ones I've seen. This is actually a street right here, but they have barricades, and you can't drive through here because this is seating for these restaurants along here, and this is part of the lungomare right here, promenade along the ocean, along the sea. There's a bike path here. Oh, I just love this. And this was all closed off. I would imagine probably in the winter time, this is open to cars, but this actually is the easiest way to drive south from Alghero to the next town. But with this closed, you had to kind of meander your way a little bit through Alghero. So I knew there was a store that I thought maybe maybe a little counterculture. I went there, and I chatted with this young woman for a while, and she was saying, well, we really don't have so much of that permaculture and stuff in Alghero. I don't know. She had some different kinds of food. It's not what I would call a natural food store, but by the name of the store and what I read about it online, I thought this might be an opportunity to make some contact with what might be some permaculture kinds of stuff in Alghero. It kind of really didn't turn out that way so much. She was really nice, and we had a good chat. Um, and I gave her a poster. This is one of my posters right here, and she was really really glad to have that. I'm sure that she was sympathetic with all of this stuff and thought the poster was great, but this didn't lead to any great discoveries of counterculture in Alghero, but it was a nice visit. So here are a couple pictures. This is kind of downtown Alghero, and you'll see that they have large areas that are car-free. This just isn't really anything unusual in a lot of places in Europe, that there are extensive areas where there are few, if any, cars. And this is only part of the area here too, but just lots of people walking. And of course, this picture, you can see the Mediterranean out there, but that's one of the reasons why people go here, because it's just so nice and you're not having to mess with cars. And it's certainly nice also that you have the Mediterranean right here. And all this old town. We'll see a few pictures shortly of the old town, which dates back many hundreds of years. But I was really attracted to of course, the area along the shoreline. The campground was about a 20-minute bike ride to go to the central part of Alghero, and I went back and forth a fair amount. But I spent, of course, most of my time in Alghero. And this was just a really nice spot overlooking the Mediterranean. I had gone to a grocery store and bought a bunch of food, and this was just a nice little table right here. So I just had a picnic right there along the lungomare, and a great view, and just totally enjoyed it. A lot of this stuff is kind of things you find in a typical Italian grocery store. A lot of stuff with olive oil and pomodori secchi, tomatoes, and carciofi, artichoke. Lots of oil, lots of really nice spices. I just love this. And of course, you can find all kinds of pizza places. And I found what became kind of my favorite place for pizza. And of course, I had apple and cucumber. And again, my Frisbee is forming, doing service as a plate, as it did many times. So I actually ate here several times during my visit there. And this is another picture of a lungomare. You can kind of go down the sidewalk to this restaurant. Of course, I didn't go down here, but it sure looked nice. This is pretty typical of a lot of places along the Mediterranean, that during the tourist season, a restaurant kind of locates itself like right down on the beach or on this rocky area. What a nice place. That's just beautiful. And this is inside a ancient, like 600-year-old structure. I talked with the people in here. This was kind of an art display right here, but just I love the architecture. Look at this. I don't know if this part here is more recent. I don't know so much the history of this. It looks a little more recent, but I was told some of these this older looking area here is like 600 years old. It's just amazing. And there was a fellow who had a display of his artwork inside this big structure. So this is another part of the lungomare, and this is also a car-free area. And the evenings were just so beautiful. From what we're reading now, this was the warmest summer ever in Europe. Just there were like temperature records all the time, not only for high temperatures, but just consistently warmer than average. So all I know is this particular experience in Alghero, and I thought this is really kind of warmer than I thought. I've seen the average temperatures, and it was almost my entire visit to Europe. Temperatures were 5, 6 degrees, 7 degrees Fahrenheit. above average just all the time. So that meant here in Alghero, it was sunset and it was like 80 degrees. It wasn't hot, but it was very warm and balmy, and it stayed warm all night long. There were nights that were only down to 22, 20 in centigrade, 70, 72 in Fahrenheit. So it was just so nice to enjoy the evening. Here's that steeple from that I mentioned first off back here that dates back to medieval times. But this lungomare, they're just restaurants all along here, and you have these walls, and then the drops off about 25 or 30 feet, down to the rocks, and that's where the Mediterranean is. You can just see all these lights, and this is kind of the old town back here, and there were these different kinds of conversation pieces in the lungomare. This is a catapult right now. I suppose it's probably historically accurate that they used this because back in medieval times, there were marauding pirates. Alghero, like lots of towns, had a defensive wall around it. You can see bits and pieces of it still there, but this I'm guessing is probably a replica. I doubt if this is actually 500 years old right here, but it shows what their catapults look like when they were hurling boiling oil, against some invading hordes from who knows where. But it's great conversation. Here's some cannons also, and these are almost certainly 400 or 500-year-old structures, and just people out walking and just enjoying, looking over the walls, um, the outdoor cafes. You can see the mass of all these sailboats. They're kind of a little bit further and down below this wall, because up here you're still a good 25 or 30 feet above the water, but there's a harbor here, of course, but just people strolling and no cars. And it's just balmy evening. And it's just such an enjoyable sensation just to be in a place like that. And I was just walking around, just find out what was I going to discover out walking. And this right here is inside a church, and there was a concert going on here, and you can't really see because of this pillar, but there are some people singing back here, and you can just walk in and listen to this concert of kind of ecclesiastical type of music, and it was a lot of people there. So that was just something I just happened to walk into. That was really great. This would be some of the ancient walls right here. This side of the wall, you're in the old town, and then you walk through this tunnel, and then you come out down close to water level, and that's where the harbor is, where there's lots of sailboats there. And it was this particular night, it was getting kind of late, and I said, I think I'm going to head back home and to the campground, and this is the bikeway. Of course, a street right here, and this is a pedestrian promenade, and then there's the beach and the water back over this way, but there's bikeway all along here. And of course, during the day when there's more people, there's bikes, there's scooters, there's every type of electrical mobility device that you can imagine. They've got it all there too. So this is another picture of my campsite. And these are oleanders here. Just a really nice view. I enjoyed that. And then another day, I was exploring the old town. And of course, this is a car-free area here, but somebody had made the effort to hang all these kind of baskets, cut out pieces of plastic with flowers, and these were all alive. I was just kind of looking at all this, and this guy walked by and walked into one of these doors, and I said, "Do you know who did all this?" And he said, yeah, it was my cousin did all of this stuff. So we had a little bit of a chat, and he was quite proud and glad that somebody had noticed these kind of decorations. Here's what that looks like a little bit more. And there's that steeple once again. And people living downtown here, this has got to go back 600 or 700 years, more or less. And Alghero's founding would be going even further longer ago than even that. But people's laundry out to dry. Boy, what a nice place. I can't imagine what it'd be like living in such a dense place, but it sure looks nice. And these pictures also in the old town cafes, just always cafes, and there's always reconstruction going on that's happening everywhere all the time. Uh, I had walked down this particular street many times. As it turned out, this location here is just kind of right about over here, a little bit off the picture right here. And once again, this is car free. So there was an archaeological museum that I went to. I spent a good deal of time there, and this is what a habitation looked like. This is probably going back to the Bronze Age. This is probably what people lived in that area, 2000, 3000 BC, I'm guessing. There was a culture in Sardegna called the Nuraghic culture, and you can find the remains of the Nuraghic culture just everywhere. They built structures out of stone, and they are scattered all over the island. Some places it's just a one structure pile of stone, and others they had these kind of the wonder there's these fortifications, some kind of astronomical something, or food storage. They didn't leave a written record, but they left a lot of stones on the ground all over the place. And but you see these just everywhere, all over the place, in Sardinia, literally all over the place. I saw lots of these. And then this is some pottery right here. Just love the archaeology. That was one of my main attractions to Alghero, was all these different periods of history, the Phoenicians and the Romans and the Sea People and Byzantines, just all kinds of history, of conquest. There's a dialect in Alghero that comes from the area of Spain near Barcelona. Actually, this dialect, of course, I don't know it, but it is something very akin to the area of Spain in Barcelona. And there's other dialects there too. There's a Sardinian dialect, and a lot of people there, when they're talking with each other, they speak in dialect, or even some might say even a completely different language. But everybody speaks Italian, so it was good to work on my Italian there too. So this is a little bit south of Alghero. This is Alghero here, and there's a road that goes along the coast down to the next town called Bosa. I never did do that bike ride. It's about 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers to Bosa. I just kind of regret that I never did that bike ride. This is the beginning of that bike ride if you were heading south. But from Alghero, you can look out these hills. I did bike way back behind these hills. You can't really see it, but back over here, there's Capocaccia, which I did take a bike ride there another day. But this is a good view of what the coastline looks like. And this is a mural that was in a pizza place that I liked to go to this pizza place. And I just thought this was a great mural painted on a wall. And this, of course, is Sardegna. And these are just lots of faces looking down onto Sardegna. I just thought it was a great mural. And I asked about it, and I was told, yeah, it was a local person who did this mural. So I was just kind of getting into a lazy mode in Alghero. The campground had a big water park. It's about the fanciest water park I'd been to, but I haven't been to very many water parks. But I was just kind of enjoying going to that and going into town. And I'd been on the move a lot for a couple months and was just sort of anticipating maybe spending a little relaxed time in Alghero. But I had an email. The campground had Wi-Fi, and I had my laptop, so I was always checking my email. And I mentioned, I think before, that I had made contact with a Facebook group, Permaculture in Sardegna, and I had posted some stuff on that Facebook. And I had said, sono Jan Spencer, vengo da Stati Uniti, sto facendo un giro in Sardegna, voglio incontrare altri con un interesse in permacultura. And I had some responses to that. And I had an email one day from a fellow named Carlo, and he said, I saw you're from the States and you're interested in permaculture. We're into permaculture too, and we invite you to come to visit us. And somehow, I don't know how he knew, or maybe I posted something about surfing. He said that if you make it tomorrow, there's an unusual summer swell. And if you make it tomorrow, we'll do some surfing. Well, that kind of motivated me. My thoughts of a lazy, easygoing few days more in Alghero kind of ended with that. And so the next day I broke camp, and there's actually a train that goes from Alghero to nearby Sassari, but the train tracks were being repaired. So I took a bus, but in Sassari, there's a train that goes all the way to the south end of the island. There are trains on Sardegna, and got the bike on that train. And this is actually, of course, on the train. This is the cab right here. So I ended up making my way down to a point on the train where I knew I had to stop at this place, because to go to Mini Maggiore, I had to exit the train. And when I got off the train, I saw a bus, and I thought, well, that might be a helpful bus. So, and this is a pretty low population area. It's a fairly small town. There really weren't even really too many houses near the train station. But I went to the bus and I talked with the bus driver, and he said, no, I don't go there. But I knew there was this town about 15 kilometers, and I knew that's where I had to go. But I also knew that from that town to go where Carlo lived, you had to do a lot of hill climbing, because there's some big hills, mountains between this town and where Carlo lived. And the bus guy told me that there's a bus that leaves at a certain time that will take you to Mini Maggiore. And but it leaves at this time, and if you want to make it, there's only one bus left today. And I had enough time if I hurried to make it to the town and find where that bus stop was. And this is along that road right here. Of course, this is nice and flat. You can see a substantial amount of totally flat countryside here in Sardegna. But of course, these are the mountains, and these are the mountains I would have to go over. This would have been a climb I'm sure, of 12, 13, 1400-foot elevation gain, kind of something like Corsica. And I didn't want to do that. I couldn't have managed to do that. I didn't want to do that kind of climbing. So I did manage to make it to that town, and I found where the bus stop was. And before too long, the bus stopped, and I loaded my bike on the bus. And I said to the bus driver, I know we go up the hill and we eventually have to go down. If there's a place you can let me off when we're at the highest point and I can go for a long coast on my bicycle, that's what I'd like to do. So that's what I ended up doing. We drove for less than an hour, and then he pulled the bus over and said, "Siamo qui, here we are." And I got the bus stopped, and I got my bike off the bus. I came back a short distance. This is the pass right here. This is almost 500 meters above sea level. So that's the bike. The bus continued on. And then this is what my coast looked like. This is the road I went on along here. Not this. This is something else, all this down here. This is the road that I went on the bicycle. And my destination was down here in this valley. It probably took me a half an hour to coast down there because I was losing probably 12 or 1300 feet in elevation going down this way. That sure was fun. So here's mini me Maggiore, and I was really excited. Here we are, right down here, where you can see this right here. This is that part where I was with the bus going up over the hill, and this is where I rode from the train station here to this town. And this is, of course, where this was all the train ride here. And of course, the train continued on to Cagliari. But this is where Carlo and Flor lived. So I was pretty excited to connect with them. I came into the town and I found a grocery store. And of course, I don't have a cell phone, but I'm not shy. There was a guy who worked at the grocery store, and I asked him if he could make a phone call for me. And of course, he was glad to do that. So we called Carlo, and he and Flor were home, and they came to pick me up about 15 minutes later. And he opened up the back of his van, and of course there's a couple of surfboards in the van. We were ready to go, and that's how we first met. And it's not so common to have a swell like this in the summertime. It does happen, but surfing is something more people do in the wintertime in Sardinia. And you do. I'd seen pictures. I knew there was surf in Sardinia when the wind is right. From where this swell comes from, sort of south, just south of France, there's a weather condition where you have strong south winds coming from France out onto the Mediterranean. And of course, waves are a result of wind. And this is a fairly often condition in the wintertime, and it happens now and then in the summer as well. I've seen it since too. Even just a couple days ago, I saw this on this weather map, and there were, this weather website indicated waves 15 feet high out there in the between South France and Sardinia. The waves we saw weren't like that, but there were still some pretty good looking waves. These are the waves right here. There's somebody out there. There were people surfing, and Carlo is actually a surfing instructor. He teaches people how to surf. People pay him money. And my guess is that there's waves often enough, consistent enough, because people come from out of town. These aren't local people. who want to learn how to surf. While I was there, we'll see, there was a German family that had some surf lessons, and there was a couple from Turkey who had surf lessons as well. So these waves right here, I just I was just amazed to see waves like this. And again, I knew the Med can be rough. I mean, ships sink sometimes. I surfed in Corsica one time when the waves were actually bigger than this, but they weren't good waves. And so this is the location here, and we did go out, and it was just a lot of fun. Water was kind of cool. You had to wear a wetsuit, and but just to see these kind of waves, and amazingly, in Alghero, which is only up the coast, maybe 80 or 90 miles, there was nothing that looked like this. It didn't look anything like this. It was like foot-high waves. I just can't imagine how it could be so different, but that's the way it was. So here's Carlo right here, and I'm all kind of worn out. And uh, actually, let me go back to, because this will sort of set up another time. We had a chance a few days later to explore all this area and around that point in a boat, but we'll get to that here shortly. So here we are. Carlo's done a lot of surfing in a lot of places. He speaks good English, and Floor, his partner, is from Holland, and she of course speaks very good English too. So that made all that interesting and easy. So this is the next day, and these are all guys from Cagliari, and they're kind of wanting to surf, but this is a scene you see at any surf place. The guys are just kind of standing there looking at, oh, where are the decent waves? Where do we paddle out? So there's a lot of this kind of, it's a surf scene. It's just a total surf scene. I've seen like this in other places. And there was a bit of surf even the following day, but it had gone down, and within 2 days after that, it was basically flat. So here's on the beach the next day. There's still a nice wave, and it's very warm. This is Floor right here, and she's from Holland, and this is the German fellow and his two kids, and his wife is probably out in the water right now getting a surf lesson from Carlo. But you really had to have shade here. I mean, it was plenty warm. Lots of people out on the beach. So that was fun. So our original intention was, the connection was permaculture. So this is back at Floor and Carlo's place. This is their kitchen. They had bought a property a bit less than a year before, and their intention was to, and is, to do something of a permaculture project there in the house. So they were, of course, interested to show me around and get my ideas on what they might do. I suggested that this area here, a little bit of a challenge, but if they could catch rainwater off the roof, this would be a good place to put some tanks, because everything that they would need to water is downhill from here. So that's what we're talking about here. Of course, the climate in Sardegna is not arid, but it's moving in that direction. It's pretty dry. Something Southern California. It's a dry summer and a wet winter is what they have, or at least comparatively wet. And we have the same pattern, of course, here in Eugene, but of course our winter has plenty of rain, and our dry summer seasons not as long as it is in Southern California or in Sardinia, but it's pretty dry. You see a lot of eucalyptus. Citrus grows there very well. I'm sure their location right here is at the very least a 9B and probably more like a 10A in terms of climate zones. So this is one day we went to another beach, and this is, of course, it's all flat right now. A few days earlier, there was a 2-meter swell, but it doesn't last so long. But this couple was from Istanbul, and we all had a good time. We just went to this beach and hung out and just do what you do on the beach. Carlo, we sang some songs and had a little beer and just enjoyed. Oh my gosh, it is just so beautiful. Loved it. And then that evening, we went into the little town, and this is just a great place for pizza right here. We had pizza here several times. I loved it. Um, very good pizza, but it was kind of odd that they had to deliver the pizza when you're eating right here, right in next to the restaurant. It came in a cardboard box, and what the explanation was is, according to the people who own the pizza place, that they had some competitors down the street who were kind of angry because they had more business, so they made some kind of a complaint that that they were doing something wrong. They weren't allowed to with their business. So the city said they had to reduce the size of their sitting area out here, and that they had to serve pizza as a takeout rather than actually served on a plate like a pizza. So it kind of did interfere a little bit with their business. But the people in the pizza place said that they had such a good pizza and business that somebody down the street didn't like them and tried to mess with their business. So this is the main street in Minimi Maggiore. And it's just, there's no franchise, there's no McDonald's, there's no fried chicken. This is just, I'm sure it looked a lot like this hundreds of years ago, other than the lights along the street. It was just quiet. This is the main street through town, and the town's a couple thousand people too. It's a small place, but it it is just quiet and probably a place where the local kids couldn't wait to leave. I don't know, but I just found it way charming. I just really like that. So the German couple invited us to go out for a boat ride. They rented a boat with a boat driver and asked us if we wanted to go along and go on a several-hour tour along the coastline there. And of course, you didn't have to ask us twice. So uh, we went out on the small boat and checked out. Oh my gosh, it was just really a wonderful way to see the shoreline from a boat. We did some snorkeling right here. Look at the watercolor there. It's just precipitous. That one picture I said, look down the coast and you see all those cliffs. That's where we are right here. And we'd stop and we'd move along and we'd stop and we went kind of through some little caves and stuff. Here is the fellow driving the boat, and Carlo and Flor right here. And just you couldn't have a rockier shoreline right there. And this is kind of going through some of these rocks here. This is kind of through a cave. And the interesting thing here is when you look at this shape right here, both this part above the water and then this reflection, the the item of interest here is looks a lot like what Sardegna is shaped like. So that was like the story for going through here. Both this and the reflection looks a whole lot like Sardegna. So we were all pretty wowed about that. And here's a little bit further along. They were really nice people. I had a good time. Their kids, we had a good time with our boat ride. And we made it back to shore. Everybody's feeling like we had a fun time. And we went to have some ice cream after that. That was great. It was getting to be, I was maybe about, with Flor and Carlo, about 4 days. And it was about time to go. So I took some pictures, of course, of their place. Um, before leaving. This is their property here. Most of this is citrus down here, and you can see it's all hilly, and kind of back over the far side of these hills is where the ocean is. It's about maybe 15 minutes meandering on a gravel dirt road to get to the surf place. It's pretty close by. That's one reason they chose to live here. And there's only a few people here. There's regulations. You just can't buy property and go build something. There's a lot of regulations. So they really don't have hardly any neighbors either. So here's the road, and a lot of citrus, and they had some fig trees, they had some plum trees, bit of a garden. You would find lots of olive trees around here. So the house had some potential, and so we looked around some. I suggested that this area here might be a place to build a greenhouse, because this is a south-facing side of the house right here. And of course, it doesn't get so cold there, but it's not tropical. They do have some frost on occasion in the wintertime. And this is a pre-made location here, I'm thinking, to put a greenhouse so they could get an early start. That can even help heat their house if they wanted to mess with doing some ductwork. But I had an email from Carlo a couple months ago, and said that he might have some help building that greenhouse. I'd like to find out what's news since then. So here's a couple other pictures, and that does that. Here's the house again. Carlo built this wall, and there's space definitely to put in some substantial garden, and they had some garden already going, but being there less than a year, they're just still in the early going. I suggested they might think about trying to plant some pecan trees there. I think pecans would do really well, and so they're going to look into that. Here's from near that road, looking back to the house right here. So they've got more citrus than they need. And these are oranges and lemons. They had a lot of citrus there. So it was time to go. So Carlo took me into a little town. There's a bus stop, and I had a bus ride to another small town a little bit further away. And it was just a great visit with Carlo and Flor. They were really nice. We had a lot of permaculture to talk about. We had surf to talk about, just kind of, what we were doing with our life. We talked a little bit about Eugene, looked at some videos. So it was a really nice visit with Flor and Carlo. So this bus, I had to climb up out of that valley, and I didn't do any coasting to the next town on this particular ride, but it was just really beautiful. It's not arid, have a lot of oak trees, but it's very dry. I'm guessing this area probably in inches, probably maybe around 20 inches a year of rainfall in this place. So I went to this town called Iglesias, and it's a place I'd never really heard of before. I'm guessing the population of Iglesias is, I'm guessing maybe 20, 25,000. Not tiny, but not so big. But this is a big piazza right here. Every town's got a piazza. And of course, there's cars all around here. But some historical person right here. And then there's definitely some cafes around the big piazza. I could have taken an earlier train to Cagliari, but there's pretty often trains to Cagliari. So I just hung out in Iglesias for a couple more hours just to have a look around. It's absolutely one of my favorite things to do, is just to explore a town, especially in Italy, just because I like Italy so much. I just like to walk around, bike around, and just see what's there. And Iglesias was way nice. When I saw these umbrellas, I just said that is just absolutely beautiful. Just this little piazza right here. And again, this is the old town too. There's plenty of cars, other parts of town, but this old part of town, there's no cars at all. And people have been walking on these stones here for many hundreds of years. So I just walked around a little bit, took pictures. This I thought was just charming. This kind of a little bit of a balcony here, and somebody had some umbrellas, and then uh, 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 flowers, potted plants up above this cafe. So I just like to be walking along and come around a corner and see something and say, "Oh my gosh, that looks so nice." And this is another example of that. Somebody had all these potted plants on this wall, and of course, pace means peace in Italian. And they had some kind of declaration. Somebody with politics, lived here. I read some of this stuff, and they were just some types of declarations about capitalism and living in a ecological way. And I just found that real fascinating. Would love to talk with whoever was there, but that didn't work out. But you can see this is looking pretty rough. And then right next door, and I'm sure these buildings are the same age, but this has certainly been kind of redone and kind of upgraded. And this probably looked like that for several hundred years. I I wandered into the city market. It's indoors, but there's a city market, not like a grocery store. They're just little small shop owners in the market, and there's vegetables and meat and some places to buy like bakery items. So this woman had a fish. So I stopped and talked with her for a while. I asked her if these fish were local fish, and she said that they were, and this is her little business, and we had a real nice chat. She was real friendly. So it became time to go to the train station, and this is the dead end. The train doesn't go any further than Iglesias. So this is the train that goes to Cagliari, and Cagliari is the largest city in Sardegna. It's not where my destination was that day, but I had to go through Cagliari. And here at the train station in Cagliari, an old steam locomotive right here. So good place to take a picture of my bike. And I kind of looked around Cagliari a little while. I think its population, a couple 100,000, something like that. And I wanted to make it to Solomanus, which is where I had a contact in Solomanus. So I kind of meandered my way out of town, and this is an actual bike path right here. You still got to be careful you don't have a door opened up on you, but this is not an unusual practice to have a bikeway and then have cars parked, and then there's actually the moving cars out here. But still, you've got to be thinking about your own safety. So this is in Cagliari right here, and I'm on my way to Solomanus, which is a small town about 15 or 18 kilometers north of Cagliari. So that is over to here. This is where the train is right here. This is the bus to Iglesias, and this is the train to Cagliari. And then I rode my bike up here to Solomanus, where I would meet up with Dana, who I had connected with also by way of Facebook. But we'll pick that up on the next episode of the visit to Europe. So I'm going to close it there. Let's just do screen sharing, stop screen share. So it's dark now, the sun's gone down, and thanks for watching. And I'll let you know when we have the next episode, and I will post this episode because it's just fun to see some show and tell. Okay, all right, bye for now.